let's take a look at some techniques to create black and white photos. In other words, grayscale photos, if you will. And, there are tons and tons of different ways to take a full color image and convert it to grayscale or convert it to black and white. And I'm going to show you a handful of techniques here. So let's go and open up our next project file. I'll just double click on my gray background and I'm going to go and grab bridge.jpg. Go ahead and grab the same file. This is a photo by photographer Tom Curtis. Now, what I want to do with this guy, obviously, is I want to take him from a full color image. Right now, I can tell, by the way, that he's an RGB image just by looking up on the document tab there. I want to take him from an RGB image and I want to convert him to black and white or grayscale. So probably the easiest way to do this would be to change the color mode of the entire image by heading up to the image menu and then down to mode, and then rather than RGB or CMYK, switch this guy to grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And when I do so, Photoshop gives me this warning. Are you really sure you want to discard your color information? Because as soon as you say discard, there's no pulling it back. Like if I click on discard and then save the image and close out of it and come back to it tomorrow, that's it, right? So be careful with this here. I'm going to click on discard anyway, and all of the color information is pulled out of my image, and now I have a black and white or a grayscale photo. However, notice that I didn't really have too much control over the process. I couldn't really tell Photoshop that I wanted to make the dark areas darker or the lighter areas lighter, this sort of thing. I really didn't have any options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that. I'm going to undo my last step, again, just by hitting F12 on my keyboard. And now I'm back to my full color image. So that's one way to create a black and white photo, but again, not a whole lot of control over the process. Here's another approach that you can use. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head up to my image menu and then down to adjustments. And in the previous exercise, you saw invert and posterize and threshold. This time, I'm going to head all the way down to desaturate. So look for desaturate inside the adjustments submenu. Go ahead and choose that guy. And you know what happens is we essentially get the same result. We still get this grayscale image or this black and white image. But what's interesting to note is that we're still inside an RGB image. So we haven't changed the color mode or the color space that our file is inside of. We've just pulled all the color out, or we've desaturated the entire image, right? But again, note that I didn't have any controls. There were no sliders or options or dialog boxes or anything like that. And myself, I like to have control over a process because again, maybe I want my darker areas to be darker. Maybe I want to control my midtones and so on. Now, I'm going to show you one more technique for converting your images to black and white photos in this exercise. And then I'll show you some more advanced techniques for doing this in the next exercise. So what I'm going to do here is I will hit F12 once again to go all the way back to my full color image. The next thing that I want to do is I want to, again, control this process somewhat, but I also want to do it in such a way so that I am not destroying my image. I don't want to completely remove the color out of my photo. I want to always be able to go back to a full color image. So this, you could say, is a non-destructive technique for removing color from your image or converting your images to black and white. And I'm going to do this by using an adjustment layer inside my layers palette. Do you know about adjustment layers? I hope you do. What I'm going to do is I already have my layers palette open. I'm going to head down to my menu down here, my adjustment layer menu, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy. And the guy that I'm after, I think you're really going to like this, is a guy called Gradient Map. So go ahead and create, essentially what we're creating is a gradient map adjustment layer. That's what we're after here. So I go ahead and choose gradient map and a bunch of things happen. First of all, boom, I get a black and white image. Doesn't it look more, I guess, stunning or visually captivating than our previous efforts? The darks are darker. It's a much richer looking image, I think. The lights are a little bit lighter. What the heck is going on here? Well, that's the first thing that happens is right away we get a much more stunning black and white photo. But over on the right-hand side, I'm now thrown into my adjustments panel. And I'm kind of scratching my head going, okay, well, what's up with that? Well, check this out. I'm going to go back to my layers palette for a second. There's my original photo, my original full color photo. And then there's the gradient map adjustment layer sitting on top of the photo. So if I turn off the visibility for my adjustment layer just by clicking on the eyeball there, I'm all the way back to my full color bridge, right? My full color photo. So I've non-destructively converted this guy to a black and white photo. So at any time I can go back to the original, right? Which I really like. So I'm going to turn this guy back on, turn his visibility back on, and I'm going to head over to the adjustments tab there, the adjustments panel. And all we're doing is we're applying a gradient over top of our photo. That's kind of a weird thing to wrap the noodle around. But we saw working with gradients earlier, right? So what I have here is a gradient that's going from solid black to solid white. That's it. But what I could do is I could drop down my gradient menu and I could go and choose a different gradient. For example, I could go and choose the default here, the foreground to background, and my foreground color is white. My background color is black, if you take a look down in the bottom of my toolbox. So if I choose this guy, I'm going to get a black and white negative, which is kind of a cool effect. Or check this out. If you want to go for sort of a pop art effect, or maybe like an Andy Warhol effect, you can start trying out some of your other gradients, like the red to green or the violet and orange, and so on. You can really do some bizarre, wild, crazy things here. And I'm going to leave it up to you to experiment with these guys here. So in addition to showing you how to create rich black and white images, we're also delving further into this idea of special effects. That's kind of a cool effect there. But so I'm going to go all the way back to the black to white. This guy here, there's my black and white photo. Looks awesome. And of course, don't forget, this is non-destructive, right? I can always go back to my original photo, which is awesome. Okay, great. So there's a bunch of techniques for converting your images from full color to grayscale or to black and white. I want to show you a couple of other techniques for doing this as well, and then we'll move on and I'll show you some additional special effects.